camera running around?
Yeah.
I tell you what, step closer behind the computer so that
Into
you
the
can see
light.
yourself. Or we can see you.
Not in front.
Oh, you want it?
There you go. Keep going. There you go.
Yes, yes.
That's all right.
That's very cool. Aaron?
Yeah, good.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dave Chu, and I'm DJ Horse, and we're going to talk a bit about the project we did for the Applied Dreams, those are agents of change. So we started out with the brief and some assumptions. So we said your actions follow you around. It's been mentioned before, you know, there's no more privacy, etc., etc. We also said you build a reputation. I mean, you're still responsible for your actions, and since everything is transparent, it's even more out there. So it becomes a need to manage that reputation. So we came up with something that is called Rent a Thing. And basically, your reputation enables negotiation for access by addressing risk. And through scenarios and interfaces, we'll hope to show you how that works and to explain that framework. Now, Dave will take you through some basic scenarios.
Yep. So this is just to illustrate what we're essentially basically talking about. First scenario here. So here is a request, can I borrow your broom? Between two friends, and there's really no, we're all familiar with that sort of action. Here's somebody, none doesn't know Bob here. Can I rent your broom? Sorry. So Bob, in this case, doesn't know the nun. So she seems okay, but I should check her reputation. And it turns out that the nun is really bad with brooms. Really, really bad. So, you know, this affects his thinking. So he's willing to rent it to her, and he'd normally charge $5, but because her reputation's so bad, the price goes up. So this is an alternative, is that she doesn't have a reputation for a broom, but she has a really good Vatican Library reputation. Perfect 10. So what's going on here is that he has no way of judging her behavior with the broom, and perhaps in this case she's suggesting that her behavior with the books will impact his decision for brooms, but he thinks differently. And you know, he's willing to admit that her reputation is great with books, but it's really irrelevant in this situation. So in this situation, she's asking if she can use her reputation as collateral. So instead of putting her broom reputation on the line, she's willing to put her library reputation on the line. If something happens, then her library reputation would be damaged. But he doesn't. This is sort of opening up an opportunity for negotiation still here, where potentially he can decide that, you know, normally with that great reputation that he'd say yes, but he still doesn't really know her that well, so he's not convinced. So she kind of has another alternative here. She can ask her friend Joe about renting a broom, and Joe knows Bob, so she's asking Joe to vouch for her. He says, sure. So Joe and Bob know each other. Hi Joe, hi Bob. Can Mary rent your broom if I vouch for her? And now Joe here has a good reputation. He knows people. Everybody he tends to recommend tends to behave well. So with her reputation as collateral and with his vouch, Bob feels pretty good about renting his broom, and so he's willing to rent it for $10. Now Didier is going to talk about interface.
So yeah, a little bit functionality and how an interface could look like. So I mean, we've decided to do a web approach, and I'm just going to take you through some basic aspects. So here, you kind of see your reputation. Mine is on the rise, as it happens. So that gives you sort of overview and also links like how do I actually improve my reputation. So, and then for example here, you have recent transactions. In this case, it's a lawnmower between John and Bob, and that went well. Transaction was $20, duration of 48 hours. And there's more things like that, just recent transaction. In this case, an airplane where Josh vouched for Peter to get Patrick's personal plane for a lot of 4 or 5 days in this case. So, and you see all the other people that have joined the service and their reputation, and you can sort them. Of course, these are the good people. You also have the not so good people that are on probation, and that means that they might have abused the system once or twice, and you don't really trust them. And suspended is really if you just completely abused it, and you don't really want to deal with those people. So here is a way to manage your own objects and how you would manage levels of access, because we all have objects around us that are either more close to us or a bit less close to us. So for example, my car, I wouldn't rent it so quickly to anyone. But my books, for example, maybe I would. So one way of managing this is just saying, okay, well, I don't know, here's, what do you say, my lawnmower I don't really care about. So you put it far away from yourself. And my personal plane obviously is close to me. And in this case, it's 3 levels, and level 1 being closest to me. And so I can put all these in with different levels, and that kind of manages how people can access my things. Because obviously, if you want my airplane, you better have a good reputation and know me very well. So it's a way of managing my own objects, and in this case, if the interface gets too crowded, you can zoom in and add more things, etc., etc. It's basically a way to manage those objects. So now for the vouching part, which we touched upon earlier, we'll give you another example of how that may work. So here you have Bob, Mary, Vincent, and Nancy. And so they have a transaction of bow and arrows. And as you can see, actually, it has a thumbs down. So something went wrong, and it's flagged. So somewhere along the line, something went wrong, and Nancy is not happy because Bob has broken the bow and arrow. So how does that work in this vouching system? Well, as it happens, Mary vouched for Bob, Vincent vouched for Mary, and then to get Nancy's thing. So what happens is that Nancy gets his back broken, blames Vincent, and says, well, look, that's not very cool. Vincent starts blaming Mary because it was through her, and then Mary, at the last, blames Bob. So what actually happens is that Bob gets a triple negative rating because of the vouching system and because you're more degrees away from someone. So actually, it's more risky to borrow things from people you don't necessarily directly know. So that's how it trickles down with the vouching system. So in this case, Mary and Victor will probably not vouch for Bob again. That's a consequence from this system. Now, Dave will take you to some futures.
So what can we imagine this potentially being? Quite a few things, actually. So Nancy and Eric the Red, are at the laundromat, doing some laundry. And the laundromat has a history knows about the behavior of Nancy at the laundromat, and she's been pretty good. So there's a discount associated with this. So because of her great reputation, she gets a discount. The price for her for doing laundry is $2. Eric the Red, however, not so good. And he does not get a discount, so he has to pay full price because of his poor reputation. Another scenario here. Bob has a battering ram. And it stays parked all day while Bob is at work. Not being very good practice. Since the system sort of knows what he's doing and knows his usage, it can perhaps suggest periods of time when it's parked that it's not being used. Sorry.
You can do it, Dave.
Yeah. See, okay.
Anyway, sometime later, Dave.
All right, just get it out.
Yeah. So Vincent's not very happy. The bus hasn't arrived. He's gonna be late for the raid. So hey, I'll rent the vehicle for the morning. Is that Bob's battering ram parked over there? Why, yes, it is. So Vincent calls Bob about renting a battering ram. Bob can see that Vincent has a very good history and reputation with battering rams. And so he's done business with him before and says, hey, I've done this before, haven't had any problems, reputation's good. If he gets it back before 3 o'clock, I can still avoid rush hour. It's all fine. And rate ends around 12:15. I can get back to the parking spot before 2, no problem. Everybody's happy. This is a bit of a twist here now. Bob has been busy at work and really doesn't have time to manage these phone calls, people requesting stuff. So he hires a company to manage the renting of his battering ram. And when he's looking at this company, he sees what's their reputation. They do really well with, they treat the battering rams very well. And their clients that they do business with are actually of pretty high quality as well. So he can feel pretty confident about that arrangement. And the company maintains its reputation by renting only to clients with good reputations. So when Vincent needs to rent a battering ram now, the company manages the transaction, and Bob gets his money. The company has a flexible inventory. Whatever they need, they can get from different people. And Vincent gets his battering ram. Another scenario here. Vincent's waiting for the bus and talks to Nancy here. Can I rent some Wi-Fi from you? Checks out. This is a very basic transaction, but he's renting a connection here, and everybody in the past he's rented from has been very happy. So sure, just pay the access point when you're finished. And finally here, Nancy stays with a friend of a friend, and because she's such a good guest, her reputation has gone up after this renting process here. So we can imagine that a better rep means more people are likely to rent to her, and we can imagine that as her reputation increases, pretty much any room in the world, any house in the world could become a hotel. So you're going to talk about this?
So, going back to what this is all about, basically by developing your reputation and basing it on some of the aspects that we discussed in the brief, you get access to more objects, and that again, if you behave correctly, will influence your reputation. So that closes the circle and represents the flow that is in this model. So, and of course, the system is not foolproof. I mean, there will be abuse, there will be problems, and that doesn't mean that information is open that human behavior necessarily changes. So I think that was a kind of warning we want to put in there. That still can happen. And we'd like to acknowledge Neil Churchill, Fabio Sergio, Pietro Turi, Ashley Firmino, Christian Colino, Claudio Moderini, and Ali Rose. Thank you.
I see the semblance with eBay. What would be the difference?
This is a question that's come up before because there's also another project last year, service design, called Sharer. And I think the main difference that we're talking about here is that Sharer, from what we looked at, deals with convenience, it's ease of use, and I think same thing with eBay. There's sort of you gain access to pretty much whatever you want, but there's always sort of an unknown in that transaction, and that's what we're identifying here, is that there is some level of risk involved, and right now there is no way to quantify it. And perhaps between your friends, it's easy enough, you have a reputation amongst your sort of close circle, but when you start dealing with other people, it's a blank slate. You have no idea. Like, I have no idea what your history's been. So what we're saying in the future, well, not in the future, in this scenario here, everything is known about you. Our service is quantifying that in some way so that when I deal with you in some transaction, I can look at your past history and sort of get a sense of whether or not you're a trustworthy person, you have a good reputation. Do I have a chance of actually getting my object back in one piece? And right now, I mean, eBay does it for transactions, but there really isn't quite the same, I guess, the trust level. There is, I guess what you're talking about is the rating system that they have.
Actually, I was talking about the reputation.
Yeah.
You know, because the
That's
way it's being measured.
Yeah, okay, so the other aspect of this is that within eBay they have a reputation, but we don't know at this point how that translates to, say, Amazon, or to renting a car, or borrowing a bike from me. That's your eBay reputation. So what we're suggesting here is that this is a sort of universal reputation, that this is something that you can start tracking individual transactions and then try and start relating them between different services or different situations. And that's something that's not available at the moment.
And the other question is, how can you build up if you already have a negative reputation? How will you build up a better one?
You could probably start off with like a close circle of friends. I think what we're saying is reputation is sort of allowing you to sort of extend your network. And once you start getting a bad reputation, starts closing off options. But you still have your friends. I mean, if your reputation is really bad, that's perhaps saying something about you need to start changing your behavior when you start borrowing. But you need to start off kind of low and work your way up again.
But also, I mean, if you look at your close circle of friends, there might be people that you would never lend money to simply because you don't trust them. You know, they're wonderful to drink a beer with, but they never pay you round. You know, that's, again, I don't think we're trying to change human behavior. It's just presenting a framework that people can tap into, not only people, but actually companies as well, and where you start tracking and measuring a certain reputation level. And yeah, well, if you manage to abuse of it too many times, it's like in real life. Game over.
With the example you just gave me, sometimes what you should do is you just lend money and know that it's not going to be returned.
Yes. Well, as an economist, I have to disagree.
I think what Didi is saying though,
That was a good answer.
Next,
You have to be
Claudio.
my friend anyway.
I think there are two very nice potentialities that some of them have been exploited, but we want to ask. One is interesting the model in which is not only one person to one person, but one person to an organization or a system, like a service, services. Because in that area I see also one strong potentiality of adding a layer that is about, for instance, insurance, in the sense that today what doesn't work in eBay is that eBay is facilitating the transaction, but is not giving any support in the fact if this goes wrong. Here, since we are managing like moving of goods, if something got broken, if I give part of my fee to the system, I should also have a sort of balance in which maybe this can pay back or repair or whatever. I think that is a very, very strong. The other that is very interesting, that it was in some picture, I'm not sure that you pointing this, but it is the question. I was liking the idea of having like this kind of logo sticker or tells put it on the object itself, because it is like the link that could like facilitate, it could have also some kind of information attached to it. I'm saying I have the bike parked in front of the house all the way, and this could be marked, but could also be marked like from this time to this time.
Well, actually, we printed out stickers, and there's lots on
No,
I got a picture here. I put it on my car. What? No, not that quick. I put it on my car just to see what it would look like, and it's kind of interesting, yes. And we would imagine this in the world of spines, etc., and free information. That this could be a very quick transaction, especially between trusted people. Could be very quick. Just ask for confirmation, and you go. So
Yes.
definitely.
Or maybe with some level of mediation in which obviously if it's just a sign, but if it's something like maybe that has also is able to change dynamically the information according to could also facilitate the transaction in this sense. And I like very much this idea of like making this physically taken out from like some kind of pure web application or.
You might also want to talk about some of the ideas of fleet of printers and that distributed model that you seem to be hinting at also with the hotel or having a room in every other country, and it's actually managed as a hotel from like a central position. I don't know.
yeah, we're sort of very briefly saying here that the company has flexible inventory, so it's sort of that's one aspect that they don't really need to have a fleet of cars for a car rental service because DDA is renting his car through the service, renting to this DDA is leasing his, I don't know how to say this. The company is renting it from him so that he can rent to other people. So it basically has a flexible inventory. If it needs to find a truck, it can find somebody with a truck and rent it for them if they're willing to do that. But there's also potential. One of the areas we didn't really, I guess, explain or explore in these scenarios is with spines, intelligent objects. They always know where they are. There's sort of less instances of theft, problems like that. So one of the scenarios we talked about is having these cameras around in a piazza, and you can just take pictures and rent them as needed on, for 2 minutes or something. There is no sort of camera store that you have to go to. That objects can sort of live in the world.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely, as Claudia mentioned, location-specific objects, bicycles. I remember at some point when I was in Copenhagen, I had these yellow bikes that you can take, you put some money in it, and then you can install them anywhere else. Well, it's basically the same model. It would just be facilitated by technology and actually managed. Because, of course, what happened in Copenhagen was that after 2 weeks, I think all the bikes disappeared. So I think this framework would provide some kind of control management of that through either directly through persons or companies managing bikes.
If I was walking, say, past your car and saw the sticker and wanted to rent it there and then, or quite quickly, how do I have to go back, get home, get on the computer, log in, all the communication? How's it?
No, well, there's different scenarios you can imagine. You don't know me, you could try.
Say if I do.
Okay, you do know me, and let's assume that you actually are allowed to actually use my car when I'm not using it. So you would come up to it, and well, there's different scenarios possible. But let's say you use your mobile phone, you just put it on the sticker, and it authenticates you, and it sends me a message. Oh, Heather wants to borrow your car. Is that okay? I know you, I trust you, so I say either yes or no based on whether I need it or not because I do not trust you, but I really do trust you. So therefore, the car would unlock itself, and you would be able to take it.
I think DDA is the example DDA had of the interface with the different levels of objects. I think addresses some level of that. Perhaps on the basic level of my books, I don't really care so much about them as much as my car. So maybe if you know me, you have to ask still for the car, but books you can kind of borrow, and I can just sort of find them because they're spines and because they're intelligent. They can tell me where they are, or you can let me know.
Added to this question, do you remember the I need a car for 5 minutes now scenario? Do you remember this scenario?
I think that's what we basically translated into the battering ram.
There's something more immediate, in the original scenario, which is that you can have something there because it's there right now. It's opportunistic, and immediately you can have a very, very quick relationship, like a 2-minute car ride.
Sure.
You remember, which I thought was really strong.
I couldn't really make it like a Playmobil street, so I
That's fine, Dave. This is a very good point.
Like strong relation to geographic location there. So how do you refer to this? I mean, obviously you're talking about this, how close you are to some people, but the opportunity to rent objects is based pretty much on how far they are from you. So how is that falling in yourself?
We've talked about this. Actually, one of the when we're discussing is like yes. I mean, if you rent things or you take things from other people, or even a small amount of money, it's easier when they're close to you, right? So we were thinking, okay, maybe it's just a service for a whole apartment building, for example. But that would limit the service a little too much. But I mean, they haven't been worked out in this presentation. But I think you could think of different models for addressing that geographic need. For example, grouping, or actually in the interface, making sure show me only objects that are within my vicinity. Things like that you could definitely do with intelligent objects.
I think to add to that,
What about the effort related to that? It's not just the way that the system can browse or categorize geographic location, but how, I mean, that was like the main issue in James's in share service. How do you actually do the transaction? How do you kind of take, I don't know, skis, a pair of skis, and exchange with somebody who lives even in the other end of the land? It's pretty much like half a day of work. And then the
Well-
transaction money is also like, it was kind of, what's the balance between the value that you're getting from renting 2 skis and the amount of effort you need to be invested just to get them?
I think that if you really want them, you have to move a little. If it's only 2 blocks or a metro ride away, I think that's fairly reasonable. If you need them and you want them and you can get them at reduced price. Obviously, if you have to drive 500 kilometers to get them and it will cost you 50 euros in petrol, then it becomes not a viable economic model. But again, we're trying to facilitate the ease of use by tying it into location, and maybe, you know, exactly the 2-minute car ride is a better example where, you know, I know it's close, I need it, I need to go to some other place, a trusted friend of mine is fine with that, and technology enables that transaction to be very, very quick.
I think one of the things that we talked about that helped address that inside was looking at this as more of a reputation engine rather than just a sort of rental service model with a lot of the obligations. So certainly you could see a reputation model combined with what we had mentioned before, which was the Sharer project before, and thus you have maybe a rental service, but more than looking just at the rental service here, but looking at the model of an engine for reputation and maybe not for the facilitation of the transaction.
Well, it's pretty much, if it's just a reputation service, then the credit card company provides similar service.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they measure your reputation is less apparent on the parking space, like pretty much what they do.
There's a difference.
They
Of
vouch for it.
Yeah, but that's a different sort of vouching because it's a quantitative. That's you paid your money on time. You've been late with your payments. We're talking personal objects. You know, if a company rents out computers, they don't really care so much about how the quality of them at the end of the day. I mean, if it's my personal computer, I really care about whether or not you scratched it. Company, the rental car company, for example, doesn't really, you know, care about as long as their cars are running at the end of the day. That's what they really want. They want to get the money, and they'll rent to you again if you damage it in the first time. As a friend, though, and somebody I trust or I know, and with my personal goods, that's a different story. That's where I think the qualitative aspect of trust and past behavior comes in.
But another thing, imagine, or you come in here and I see you have a very bad credit rating. And because of that, I will not allow you to ask me any questions. I mean,
I got the message.
anyone with credit?
I mean, if it is a reputation engine, how else could it be applied? Because there's something slightly jars with me, is this idea that I kind of can create kind of commodity or income through all the objects I actually don't ever use, really. It's like a money generation system. You know, can you imagine the reputation engine being used for something a bit more...
But actually built in that model, you also have the essence of reducing the number of things. If I know that I can rent out a lawnmower very quickly from my neighbor, I won't buy it. Then you're actually creating an opportunity. Sorry, to answer this question for you guys.
But
We have discussed about this. So it kind of hidden under the commercial layer, there's also an opportunity to just reduce the number of useless things that sit in people's homes most of the time.
But if I know my friends well, and I know that you have a lawnmower, that I will probably just call you up and say, can I borrow your lawnmower? And do I need a service where I charge you potentially to use my lawnmower, or the other way around?
We discussed that because that would be a weird transaction because I would probably not charge you. And it
But
could
the cost
be,
is up to the offer. So you can say take it for free. So there's no.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could set a price for certain objects, but you could say, well, all my level 1 friends can use these things for free because obviously, if I'm going to give you a book or lend you a book, I'm not going to charge you $2. I mean, but however, I remember being.
But if my reputation's bad, you might.
I might charge you. Yeah. Sure.
There was one kind of key criteria that we brought up in the brief that wasn't really explained in the 2 introductions to the brief that we've had, which is came out of a structure that Harold Reingold discussed in one of his books on community, which was that even though that you have a particular mediated relationship with someone, say in a forum, then actually that relationship can change based on their expertise or based on a new relationship that you can form with it. And I think that's one of the values that's come out of here, which is that it's continuously recontext the relationship that you have with people. So you can be a great friend of someone and know them really, really well, and suddenly confront them in a completely different way if suddenly they wanted to borrow like £10,000 from you. You know, so that kind of so even within people that you know really well, it might need to be contextualized to make it easier to experience. Nick?
I mean, the way I see the system, if I was to use the system, the way I see it affecting me would be me kind of, every action that I would take that would affect my reputation, I would see it as affecting my access to the resources of everyone around me, right? So it's kind of has this, at least from my perspective, it has this kind of inherent kind of pull towards making me think of everyone in terms of the resources that they have. So do you think there's any way of maybe spinning the system so that it is maybe less, it promotes people using other people in a divisive way a little less?
I mean, I think when we first started looking at this, it could be used as negatively, but I think it's also very positive. I mean, in the sense that you gain access to things you wouldn't necessarily buy or even be able to afford. Potentially, you know, the example of being able to travel around the world and have anybody's house have an apartment for you for rent because your reputation is good. I don't know that it needs to become the central sort of focus of your life, but it's a way of gaining value for something that which right now you can't quantify.
I mean, I see it. I mean, the performance of it is really clear. Like the utility offered by the system is really clear. It's just the way that it affects my perception of other people as being kind of potential resource providers or like assets in a sense. It's it has this strange